Guys, I am in South London at the moment because we have been invited by someone that's put it all on the line, has built up their own studio. They're an award winner.
I always romanticised about the idea of doing it. I also wanted to be a bit younger in doing it.
They've got all the cool projects, doing it large, but we're in 2026, baby, and it ain't that easy.
Something needs to change where people have got to get rid of this perception that small, newer practice is still more risky than going with the same old, Sevil, who are actually very large and have incredibly high turnovers, and actually in a time of uncertainty are potentially more risky because they've got a lot more to lose. What it feels like, especially in the commercial sector, is in order to network with the right people, you need to be in the room, but then the cost of getting in the room is obscene. If I was to say it was really easy, it's not. Absolutely is not.
It's hard. Who teaches you how to build and run an architecture practice? Is it all done in architecture? I'm not so sure. We're going to ask someone ourselves. Come with me, let's go. Alex, how are you, sir? Good to see you. How are you doing? I'm all right. Yeah. Here we are.
So we've got the room over here.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. What? I am here with Alex Sutton of Sutton Studios.
Might need to start again because it's Studio Sutton.
Oh, okay. Let's go again. Can you paint the lay of the land of the reality for someone? There's so many hats you wear in the business.
Yeah.
You're the teacher, you're the mentor, you're the disciplinarian when it has to do it, and you're also the work winner. What is the process of winning work like, and where is the hidden cost per se?
I think we live in a very immediate society now. Things like fast fashion, everything has to be instant. Everything has to be now. I want it now. I want it now. I want it. Everyone, I think, does appreciate design until they have to pay for it. There's like an irony with it all.
How come you distill 1,000 hours of mistakes I've made? Like, what advice would you give to people? Hello, everyone. I am here in South London because I want to learn about what it's like to run an architectural practice. Now, I was a part 1 and a part 2, and I never got there myself, but other people have, and we're going to learn from them together. What is it like to run an architectural practice? Well, I am here with an award-winning architect who has done it themselves, and I'm going to let them introduce it because I keep getting everything wrong. Alex Sutton, how are you? Are you okay?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And it is
Studio Sutton.
Studio Sutton. Not Sutton Studio, Studio Sutton, award-winning architecture practice. Thank you for bearing with me as well. The audience knows what I'm like, but more importantly, so how have you been lately? All good?
Yeah, it's been an interesting few months, I think. It's the war doesn't seem to be getting any better, so that's always positive. But no, otherwise, personally, I can't complain.
Yeah, I mean, every business owner I speak to at the moment, including myself, we have that. Yeah, it'll be all right. But there's so much good stuff that you've done as well. Before we talk about the present, I would like to wind back. Because, like, for me, there's always that moment when you go into architecture, you decide to study it. And for me, I was always playing online games, SimCity, doing all that stuff. And that was my gateway into doing architecture. How about yourself, though? Did you always think that you wanted to become an architect?
Well, I think it definitely came to me earlier on. I think I grew up in a family who was connected to the real estate world, particularly my father. So he was a graphic designer and ran a marketing agency, particularly for commercial real estate. So I was exposed to a lot of that world that was going on, particularly through the 90s. He was taking finished buildings and having to give them identity and brand. So I was always surrounded by plat and drawings and I guess a creative family. So I was always interested in getting into that world and seeing where it goes. And I think generally through school and then obviously into uni, I had my career set on going into that field. So it was never a question. I don't think there may have been a few other creative professions that I may have dabbled in, but I was quite set on wanting to get into that sphere.
Got you. And then, so what uni did you end up doing your part one and part two in?
So I ended up at the Bartlett.
Oh, you went to Bartlett.
Yes,
Okay.
I did the
Smack
Bartlett.
bang in London.
Yeah, smack bang in London, and I was born and bred in London, so it was I never left, even though I tried. I actually tried to go to Bath when I left school. I tried to escape London, but London wasn't having it, clearly, so I ended up staying. I just went up the Northern Line a few stops, and went to the Bartlett undergrad, masters, and part three.
Oh my
I
God,
got a full hat trick.
you are like the Bartlett purist though, but I mean, I know people that love it as well. So you went to the Bartlett, that's really cool. And then for your part one or part two, just really, really quickly, what was that first role in industry? Were you at the time applying for anywhere? Did you have one or two practices that you had in
I
mind?
think, interestingly, coming out of undergraduate, I wasn't 100% sure exactly where I was going to end up or what I was going to do. I think I ended up shopping around a bit and interviews at different practices, I think. But I actually ended up at a small practice, not too far from here, actually, down in Shad Thames, called Sevil Peach. They were more focused on interior architecture, particularly workspace. Their bread and butter was the future of work. Actually, they were probably one of the pioneers of the modern workspace that we now accept as the norm or the way the world is going today. And I went into that not really knowing what to expect, and actually came away with a huge appreciation for looking at buildings from the inside out and with a design-led focus. What was amazing with them is, being a small team, we were thrown into the deep end. So we were doing large projects on an international scale, but with a very small team, and with a really strong focus on design quality and putting people first. I learned a huge amount through them, and I was with them all the way through until actually, so part one, part two, and I got my part three with them as well. And then I left them and I set up Studio Sutton.
Well done.
So they were a huge foundation for what we have then tried to continue with.
That's very interesting. And then, so you took the plunge, right? So for me, there was, when I was studying architecture, and even now, you speak to some people, and it was always their dream to open a studio. I still have one friend at the moment. I can't name them because they're still at the architecture practice, but I'll have a few beers, and I'm like, when's the studio coming up? Do you think you always in the back of your mind felt like you wanted to open your own studio, or did it happen organically?
I think I always romanticized about the idea of doing it. It was also, I think, a timing thing as well. I like the idea of doing it. I also wanted to be a bit younger in doing it. So I actually set up Studio Sutton when I was 29. Because I was seeing a lot of people set, their studios up later in life, 40s, 50s, but I didn't, if we were going to be successful, I wanted to still, be young enough to enjoy, the fruits of what that studio was doing. And my previous company, they were starting to wind down, organically, naturally, as part of life. And there was a moment there where it was a question of, do I just go work somewhere else, or do I give it a go? And I think what I liked about where I used to work was, because we were a small team, I had a lot of responsibility, I had a lot of influence, I had exposure to an incredible amount of projects, amazing projects. We collaborated a lot with other architects, and I think that role sort of helped shape me into a position that I thought, actually, I would like to give starting a practice a go and see what I can, I felt it was a natural continuation of what I was doing before, of course, with additional headaches of what business comes with business and practice, but it felt like a natural progression. And fortunately had, a good network of people around who were interested in keeping relationships going. So that kind of allowed me to take the plunge and give it a go in August 2019. So you can probably guess what was going to happen next.
Oh my gosh. So you had 1 year before the pandemic.
Not even that, 6 months.
Oh my gosh. I remember I was furloughed at the time as well. And it kind of kickstarted the architecture social, but at the time I was quite content in my role. So, oh my gosh. So we're planning to open up your studio that you have now. which is amazing. So you had 6 months before the pandemic. So what was that like? Because these are two different worlds going on. So in the 6 months before, how far did you get before everyone went into the lockdown first and foremost?
So I think I finished with Sevil Peach in July 2019 and set up Studio Sutton in August 2019.
Oh, yes.
So I didn't actually really give myself much time off. There wasn't much break. It was kind of straight in. I think it was just, again, nature of timing. And there was, collaborative partners and people who wanted to keep that relationship going. I think that's, from an advice point of view, to anyone who wants to set up a practice, I think having the foundation where you have an element of patronage, it's one of the biggest pieces of advice I've ever been given. And it's what we were able to secure from the outset, which means that you have something to start with and you have someone that's, championing you, because it is very hard to go out there when you suddenly, clean slate, you don't have the brand, you only have yourself to go with. So if you've got that patronage with someone that's supporting you, that helps you get going. So that was a big thing. So it was a timing thing, got that going. And we had some interesting projects that were lined up. We were looking at doing a co-working space over in Kensington. We were looking at doing we're involved in a co-working space, flex office space over in London Bridge.
Yeah.
And they were really exciting. And if, those projects had, for a small new practice was, a great opportunity for us to get established and also be able to cement ourselves within the commercial real estate world, which again is another sector which is very difficult to break into if we're not already established. 6 months in, COVID happened. Well, COVID was starting to show its.
I was
just before Christmas.
You'll see, it's like rumors about you where people are like, oh, yeah, there's like virus in France, it should be all right. It will all be over in a week or two.
Yeah.
Of course, it wasn't over in a week or two.
Yeah.
We ended up with 2 lockdowns.
Yeah.
I was a functioning workaholic who didn't know what to do with themselves. But
it was the most bizarre time. I think I look back on it with, I think it was really odd. I think because we were a new business, we were renting a couple of desks, subletting a couple of desks over in Marylebone.
Yeah.
And we had flexibility, I guess, inherently built into our operation from day one, because we're a small team. We had laptops, we were using cloud servers. As soon as lockdown happened, we could just pick up and go.
Yeah.
And go home. And nothing changed really. Apart from obviously need to make sure work continues. So I guess with that, and there was also an element of naivety about running a new business. So everything was so new that almost when COVID came along was like, well, it's also new anyway. This is just part of the newness. So in some ways it was not so scary because none of us knew really what was going to happen and how long it was going to go on for. The unfortunate thing is, I think at that point we still had the projects that were lined up. We were working on. We were still working on them. We took some of those even as far as Reba Stage 4.
Yeah.
It was only, I think there must have been about 6 month lag from when COVID started to those projects actually getting shelved and cancelled. So by that point, we were now in end of summer, autumn 2020.
And you do commercial, isn't it?
Commercial.
At the time in the pandemic, that was the first time we were all thinking about working from home. What's it going to be like? You weren't even allowed.
Exactly.
So,
So the projects that we had then got cancelled. So suddenly we had a year's worth of work that was just a CAD file. And we had to start again. It's almost like you had to start again. Because
of course,
what we've got to show for yourself, you haven't got any build projects. As a new business, you have a great CAD model and some CAD drawings and a Stage 4 pack. But apart from that, who's going to buy that off you, as a sell?
I don't know about you, but when I started my business, it was like, even some of the clients that before, it's just, there's so many practices around that people go, oh, we're okay, we're all right. So you kind of have to push yourself in there, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think we were lucky that the client we were working for at the time was an international client. So they weren't just one asset and then that was it and you're done. Fortunately there was still opportunities on an international level. And again, through that patronage that I mentioned before, we were helped by being offered, other projects that we could support them with on an international level. Which almost like took us now away from the UK and started to allow us to explore overseas. So we actually went over and did some projects in Oslo and Stockholm, which is
Very different.
very different. And also during COVID, when you can even travel.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't quite measure that at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Everything. I think we didn't meet the team on that project face to face until a year and a half in or something like that. But those opportunities still allowed us to continue and support. And I think, we ended up actually then, by consequence of that, doing the first sort of 4 years of us as a practice, predominantly doing international work.
Really?
Not really much in the UK at all. And that seemed to go well. And once, travel opened up again, we could go to site, we could go and meet people. And then we were able to build really good relationships, through the network, overseas. Ironically, as the world continued to change and, wars started, interest rates spiked, et cetera, we looked at pivoting to try and focus more back on the UK again, because working overseas is quite tricky, because there's the travel, there's a huge toll on yourself, and and also you're dealing with a lot of remote, having to do a lot of remote working. We wanted to try and pivot, try and build more of an established base with projects back in London. Now we'd achieved all these some big projects, working with large companies like EY, IWG. Focusing in the UK actually turned out to be a lot harder than I was expecting.
Right.
Which was but I still think now, where we are in 2026, I think it's an incredibly challenging place, particularly in London, to do practice now.
It's really,
I think things have changed a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that, because I just want to go on one part, because I really appreciate your honesty. Even I'm finding it hard at the moment in 2026. I think that there's this pretty picture when we go into business of, it'll be fine and you're going to get support and it will all be okay. And I think sometimes we're all guilty of like romanticizing that version. But I personally think the reality of running my business, which is the Architects of Social, very, very hard. Yeah, I enjoy it. But it's not that glamorous picture. In my opinion, the leader eats last. I am definitely not being chauffeured around on a kind of thing. Occasionally, Ben will chauffeur me around now and then, but that would be in his car, and on this I'll be from lucky. But it's not all glamorous, Like I remember, like EPR Architects where I worked, they were really great, really important to me. And they were fantastic. And then I would hear stories when I was there about the good olden days when the whiskey cart used to come around, and that the three directors of EPR back in the 1930s when they set up, they would have a Rolls Royce chauffeuring them around. What I'm trying to say is, I think the dream, the illusion is different than the reality.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you paint the lay of the land of the reality for someone?
So I think there's two things. I think there's aspects of starting a business that, if I look back on it, the highs can be really high. Like you can have some, really great moments, and also, real pinch me moments of like, if you can achieve to do some, if you do some good work and do it well and people are really happy with it, like, that's the best you can do. And those times when it really think, wow, this is really great. And also if you hire well, you can have some, great people around you. I think that's critical to success in this as well. I think, being a founder, it can be also really lonely. And I think that's why then there's the opposite side of things, which is it can also sometimes be really tough. And if you ask me when in 2019, were we going to go into a global pandemic? Was there then going to be Russia invading Ukraine, which is then going to create the crisis on an international level, which is going to push interest rates up crazy, which is they're going to make so much unviable from a commercial sense in terms of the real estate world. And now as we have this conversation, at a point where the conflict in the Middle East is creating a lot of uncertainty on all levels. So we have been through, it has been a boom and bust cycle. We're fortunate that we survived COVID, and we've done some good things, and I'm really proud of that. Yeah. But if I was to say it was really easy, it's not. Absolutely is not. And but there are still aspects of that. It's given me the flexibility in my own life to do things that I think would have been difficult to do had I not done it. Yeah. And, you know, on a personal level, one of those things that, you know, happened to me when I first set up, my mum sadly was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And so I was caring for her, and then during the COVID times, having to look after her as well, but she was having to isolate. You know, it was a really, really tough time, and that messes with your head on a personal level. You know, you're trying to grow, start a business, but then you've also got, you know, the challenges at home. And then sadly, when things were starting to ease in 2021, she passed away. Oh. So then I had to deal with that. I was an only child. So the sort of, you know, the personal crisis that you have to do, but then still show up and be the bravest person and the happiest person and the most on it person to your team and your colleagues and your clients. That's been hard. So it's given, in some ways, the flexibility to be able to just deal with the pressures I had at home were great, because I don't think I would have got that, at least in traditional working relationships that were before COVID. The fact that I could deal with that, I'm so grateful for. But then the psychological, emotional side, where you're then having to also continue to be the best person, the best version of yourself at all times to benefit everyone else. As a founder and a director and a leader, that's incredibly tough. Yeah. And I think that's a journey that's one of the biggest learning curves for me. Yeah. To try and learn how to deal with that in the right way, that your business is being looked after, but you're also looking after yourself, because I think it's very easy to brush things under the carpet.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of it too. And there's so many hats you wear in the business. You're the teacher, you're the mentor, you're the disciplinarian when it has to do it, and there's so much other things. And in a practice, you're the marketing expert, you're HR, you're everything, and you're also the work winner.
Yeah.
And one of the points when we were discussing this before that you mentioned, which resonated with me, is the hidden cost of chasing work.
Yeah.
The BD part of it.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, how you went through all this personal stuff, and you should be really, I mean, it's amazing the stuff you've done. But like you said, isn't it? Hey, you can feel like, oh, my work might be drying up here, or I need to do something.
Yeah.
So suddenly, as the business owner, you kind of have to go out and wear the flag online and chase work. So for me, it can be a little bit different than what I'm used to in architecture. But what is the process of winning work like, and where is the hidden prospecting?
So I think, I mean, early on, I think we were lucky in the sense that we had that level of patronage, and I think that carried us through some difficult times. And I think the biggest lesson we learned from that was that's not something that will necessarily last forever. And I think to become complacent with that is a big mistake. And I think we were generally okay at navigating it. I don't think we were perfect. But there was a time when we needed to pivot and move away from that, because the nature of their business had changed, or people within that organization leave, etc., etc. There's other external factors coming in, AI being one of them, actually. So yeah, we had to think of ways of how to look for new work and meet people, and I think that's when when I mentioned before, we shifted, look, more on the UK market. And that's when I opened my eyes to actually how hard it is to find work as an SME in the commercial space in the UK. And I don't know if whether this has always been like this, or I've, had the wool pulled over my eyes a little bit. I don't know, but I think this is a product since COVID where people's appetite for risk is much lower than it ever was.
Or the clients. So
Yeah, on the client side.
I got you. So right.
Because we've got a good portfolio as far as I'm concerned, and I'm proud of it. I think we've done some interesting commercial work. We've done a lot of stuff overseas. The overseas market, or at least in Europe, didn't have such a big issue with us being an SME. They as long as they want to have a conversation, I think buy into the vision. But here, particularly in commercial real estate, it's very money led, and so the appetite for risk is pretty low. Yeah, I think the market's been, the economy's been incredibly volatile, understandably. So I can understand why the appetite for risk is low.
It's not fair, is it? And the bit that you wrote, which resonates with me, work doesn't necessarily go to the best designer.
Well, I think
and that's like, because it's true in university, the way I think is the best project, you win the awards. When it doesn't really work like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's connections, because it's different students, different sizes.
So since COVID, the appetite for risk, I think, has reduced. And I think that the post-Grenfell has also contributed to that. So the Building Safety Act, the barriers to entry from a paperwork perspective, if I was to call it that, have increased. And I think the difficulty is for a newer, smaller practice to emerge into a world that's dominated by incumbent larger firms is incredibly tough, because we've been through the scenario of being invited to bid for work, but then we lose them, even though we get told, oh, your ideas or your approach was novel. It was, people have thought about it in ways, you've thought about it in ways that other people haven't.
And they didn't give you the project.
And they didn't give us the project because the wider team or the board or whoever just didn't know us. So we lost on quality, against somebody who just did whatever the usual stuff was, and they knew them, so that was safe.
And you were working on this project, because in architecture, a lot of these projects, you're not really paid to tender for the work, right? So
not really, no.
So sometimes you can get something in the bursary, but my limited understanding is, so there's a submission in a month or two, and you got to get ready, and you got to get your team, which is you're paying for all salaries.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to then get a few projects which are making money.
Yeah.
And then you're going to risk it, because obviously if you get that project, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
But there's 4 or 5 architects shortlisted. Is now typically the process.
Yeah. And I think it feels like a lot of the time, like these things are just done from a due diligence exercise. They've got to go out, that client's mandate is they've got to do a due diligence when they do, or they've got to do a tender to make sure that they're getting the most competitively viable firm to be a part of that, project. But really, it feels like they already knew who they were going to go with, but they just have to go through the exercise just to say, oh, we did it. So we've lost quite a lot of work where we've been told we were good and there was nothing wrong, but we just lost to someone else. So that's been highly frustrating and a waste of time and a huge expense to us, because these things cost a huge amount of money to do. Then the other side of it is framework agreements and supplier lists. And getting on supplier lists has felt like a near impossible task, because I actually went to an engagement call recently for one of the big developers and landowners in the UK, where they're about to renew their frameworks. There was probably 150 architects on this call, all competing for a lot that will probably have 3 to 5 architects in it. The client's, procurement team who are running it were very adamant that they really wanted to encourage SMEs. This is an opportunity for SMEs, for people to, to come in and, be a part of it. They really were supposedly championing it. But in the same breath, for many of the lots that were available, as an SME, you would also have to demonstrate that you've worked in every region of the UK and have presence in every region of the UK, because they didn't want people getting on a train from London to go up to North Yorkshire or Scotland or wherever, or Manchester, because they wanted them to be available to just walk down the road. And I'm like, well, how can you honestly expect an SME to even have that? No. That's aimed at scale. And then the insurance requirements, and then the turnover requirements, and then everything else you have to go for. And actually the first stage of a lot of these things is just filling out a tick box form that instantly will kill any opportunity of an SME from being selected, because it's a yes or no answer. And if you answer the wrong question, that's it, you're instantly failed.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of risk at the start of the promise, but of doing the fair shot, but it doesn't feel like it is, or you've got a lot of things excluded. So
you don't get to show your value. I don't think you get to show the quality of the product that you can design or create or deliver. No. And I think that's sad.
No. I agree.
I think also when you talk about the cost of winning work, I think then there's, I guess, there's marketing. Obviously that's a huge cost. Social media, one could say, is a cheaper way of getting into the market, being able to expose yourself to the market, but it's also saturated by everything and anything. So it's actually, you really need to differentiate yourself amongst a very big crowd. It's like, where's Wally, really? And I think that's really tough to try to navigate those fields. But at the same time, there's also what it feels like, especially in the commercial sector, is in order to network with the right people, you need to be in the room. But then the cost of getting in the room is obscene. So you've got all these talks and conferences.
But they were sham, aren't they? You buy a table for $5,000, because that's what I get talked about. To enter the awards, you got to pay £2,000 for the awards. But but is that then?
It's a money making scheme, really. Obviously it's nice to win an award occasionally, but the cost of all these things is huge. And then you've got, a ticket to go to UK Reef is something like $1 or $2,000 for like 2 days. Then you've got MIPIM, which is again $2,000 just to walk into the hall. But then if you want to go to all the collateral stuff and stay in Nice and all that, then you're paying easily $10,000 per person. Then you've got, the memberships. If you want to be a member of the BCO, that's $1,000, and then if you want to go to their annual conference, that's another nearly $2,000. And this,
I like them, but
all of these things, they're pricing. They say it again. They have like SME bands, but you get maybe £100 off here or there. But it's almost like you've got to pay all these things to be in the room. And I worked it out for a company like us. It easily becomes about, if you wanted to go all in, 30 to 40 grand plus per person just to be involved in all these things. And you haven't at this point spent any money on other marketing, like, getting a website, your images, your portfolio, etc. But the irony with all of that is people buy from people. So actually the portfolio in some ways is more of a validation tool, but it isn't the most important thing. No. But then getting in front of the right people is more important. And it can be a considerable expense. It's got mad. It's mad. The prices are stupid.
Yeah.
And I don't know who's orchestrating all of this, but it's all, that means it's always going to be the same group of bigger firms, or, and I think also within smaller architectural world and the fit out market in commercial real estate, D&B is also a huge threat to our existence, because they're taking a lot of projects. The turnkey model is, and I can understand, it's quite appealing to a client where they can just offload the responsibility onto one party who will do the design and the build. But then because we're caught up in that, we're then squeezed by the commercials that the contractors are trying to abide by in their margins, etc. So
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about, because we're even, hypothetically, earlier we were talking about bidding onto a project, the best design, doing all that stuff. You mentioned a very good point there that, developers, they need to make a return on their projects.
I understand that.
So there is their balance there of course they want to earn as much money as possible, but I've seen definitely some projects. I mean, I live in large housing development, and I can tell you from living there where I feel that the cost has gone extreme, and there is that conversation as well, because you're an award-winning designer, right? You want to care, but where's the balance in there on how much design you can do on a project and it getting cut down on the cost? So it's sometimes, will the projects go to the person that's prepared to make the highest margins? I mean, how does it all work, right? Where does design get left?
Ironically, with design, everything you interact with in life is designed. That's the irony of it all. But because it's not quantifiable, it's very difficult for, particularly people who don't understand design to put a value on it. But you certainly know when it's bad. I think everyone can, will know when a bad design is bad, or when something's crap. I mean, or has had no investment in it at all. I think we live in a very immediate society now. I think things like fast fashion, and I think the way, and also even with social media, everything has to be instant. Everything has to be now. I want it now. I want it now. I want it, and I don't want to pay for it. I think design, everyone does appreciate design until they have to pay for it. Is like an irony with it all. But equally, if you don't invest in good design now, further down the line, you'll end up paying, it's like save 50p now, but then spend 50 grand later fixing all the problems that, you could have just solved at day one.
Yeah.
I think the commercial real estate world is starting to wake up to the idea that, quality is important. I think there is a flight to quality that you're seeing, particularly in the city, and that, there's a premium over, high quality real estate. But I think it's also exposed a lot of the sort of middle tier buildings or middle tier assets where there has been no investment because they've just rested on their laurels for so many years, and suddenly COVID came along, changed the market, and actually now they've got these buildings that nobody wants. I mean, London's in a bit of a bubble, but I think if you go around the rest of the country, there's a lot of vacancy and crap stock, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah.
And I think that the industry rewards predictability over risk. I think that's a big part of it. And that's why, in terms of innovation, you see disruptors coming in, but I don't think there are many disruptors. And I think small practice in architecture and design has a role to play in that. But if they're not being given the opportunities to come in and challenge conventions and do something new, it's resulting in this sameness that's just constantly permeating around.
Yeah, well, everything you're saying to me, I kind of feel like the point is you want to do the best work you can, but the risk ratio to doing something special, it almost feels like the cards are stacked against you.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a historical saying of like no one got fired for hiring IBM, in the computer world,
right? Yeah.
Because it's a trusted brand, or supposedly a trusted brand, and if you went to IBM, hired them, and it went wrong, you'd be like, oh, it was just sod's law, this happened, but IBM will continue. But if you went to the new startup disruptor and it went wrong, well, then your career's on the line. So everyone's almost like a self-protection mechanism, like don't rock the boat too much because you can't afford to take the risk. And I get it, there is a balance to be had. You don't want to be reckless, but there has to be a room for innovation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point? I mean, Apple, ironically, hiring Johnny Ive to come in and, design their products, that set them apart instantly from all of their competitors. They could have just built, the same looking computers, etc. But actually design became a huge part of their DNA, that they've now become one of the biggest tech companies in the world. I mean, I definitely believe that design has had a huge value in that company, as well as just the tech side. So, Steve Jobs, you could say, was the maverick and all of that. He was the one that took the risk, and he's the one that invested in it. And why are we not seeing more of that in real estate? That's what I don't understand.
Right.
Who are the mavericks? Where are the mavericks? And I think part of it is down to clients are not educated on what value design has, and actually don't tend to have, some do, some don't, but don't have the design in-house capabilities to on a proper sort of C-suite level, who are there to provide that additional value added into their business. I think people are much more interested in program, cost, and risk.
Yeah. Well,
and not anything else. I think that's...
Well, you kind of touched upon the point of what actually creates value. And, we were talking earlier about, but also gets ignored as well. So maybe there's some things there. Well, in this hypothetical cost analysis table, we're just cutting everything.
Yeah.
But reality is then we lose that sense of place. We lose that feature that could, turn the building from something mundane to exceptional that people come to. And you're on about you specialize in these amazing commercial offices. We need to, even after post-pandemic, I know we're moving back to people coming in, but it's like, it's a great place to be.
Yeah.
And I chose as well offices, which was social, which were really nice.
Yeah.
People want to go to really good places, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of getting lost in here in that decision-making process at the start, or how the project turns out sometimes.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. But is there any, what do you think creates value, Alex, in the projects you look, and what do you think sometimes gets overlooked at?
If you walk into a building and it feels good,
Yes.
every aspect of it feels good, every touch point, everything you move through, but you can't put your finger on it why, but it just makes you feel good. That's value, I think. And that tends to have been a product of good design. If you go into something and it's not nice and it feels bad, it's likely to have been prioritized in all the wrong areas. And hasn't value designed.
Got him.
If I was to put it in a very simple form.
I think that's fair. It's a shame that gets forgotten.
It is
the reason we study architecture.
Yeah. And I think architects get a bad rap for, or architects don't sell themselves properly. Which, on one hand, maybe. But I actually think part of it is also on the client side. So, financial world, the real estate world, even project management world, construction world. There isn't enough education to them in their own development of the value of the good design.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is just an architect's problem. I think this is actually that they're not investing in it properly themselves through their own development from school, university and onwards. I think it's too much about money. And I think that would be my sort of devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I think architects, it's like, it's not about finished projects. You put images of finished projects on websites. That no one cares about that. But actually it is important, because that is the outcome, and you can tell a crap one from a good one just by the photo. Yes, it's not the be all and end all. The journey, how you got there, the solutions that you provided to the problems along the way are incredibly important, and those need to be spoken about more and sold as the value add. But equally, I think the clients need to stop being, in my opinion, ignorant and start sitting up and actually learning from design.
Yeah.
And that needs to be a part of their education and training, in my opinion. I think you are starting to see developers in the UK who are starting to bring in-house design managers or design directors to help steer developments. But I still don't some of them I don't think are given a strong enough platform to be able to really influence.
Yeah, that's a shame. Well, one would hope really that's what the role of the RBA or the ARB should be, in my opinion. RBA working at you. I could say that I was on the RBA council. So that's okay. I can get away with it.
Yeah.
And if the cease and desist things come in, then I'll deal with them then. Jokes aside, though, I think that in 2026, what I really admire about yourself is that you are the leader. You're going out winning the projects. You don't always win them. You got to dust yourself off. You got to keep going. Sometimes you got to do the unglamorous project to pay for the. We've got all this stuff going on. This really is like the reality of being a business owner.
Yeah.
To be a founder as well. There were some things when we were talking before here about the emotional reality of running the studio. You kind of touched upon that of always being the best version, even when you feel like crying in the corridor. You know, I've had that moment of you're on the Teams call and then it ends and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But what maybe we could talk about is because the emotional reality of running the studio is hard. You got to pivot in the business. You got to do all this stuff. For anyone that is setting up an architecture practice, because I kind of feel like we could say all the negatives of it, but anything like me, and maybe you've been saying, I would still do it anyways. And so for those stubborn people like me, who are going to do it anyways, what advice would you give them about the set in the studio? Like, how can me and you distill the 1,000 hours of mistakes I've made, and I'll do 1 or 2 with you, and and some of the mistakes you've learned and overcome. Like, what advice would you give to people?
I think you need to really do it for the right reasons. I think, you've got to accept that it's not going to be easy, I think. And I think you need to a certain extent, be prepared to put yourself last.
Yes.
You always want to be in a position where the business is, flying high and you're able, and it all works smoothly. But the reality of that is it just doesn't always work that way. And you will need to put yourself last and be comfortable with that. Obviously it can't go on forever, because you also have to look after yourself as well. And I think that's really important. So there's definitely been times when I don't think I did look after myself properly. Cancelling holidays, firefighting issues, feeling that I can't step away. But there are times when you need to actually try and wipe that from your brain and
easier said than done.
A lot easier said than done.
I was only laughing because everything you described there is exactly what I do and still do. Try not to.
Yeah, it's hard. But I think I've become a lot better at, being able to try and step back, being able to put more responsibility and trust into the team. And also trying to create a culture here where it's not about all-nighters, it's not about ridiculous hours, it's actually about a healthy working relationship. And this is actually something I learned from uni when I was at the Bartlett. The culture then was everyone's working 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week, 100-hour weeks, doing their projects, burning out completely, depressed, crying. It was a really unhealthy time. And I quickly learned when I was doing that if I could get home and have a good night's sleep, and be really strict with that, I was so much more effective the next day. And actually, if you listen to all the health gurus around, it's quite obvious. You need to be able to step away and have moments to rest and respite, because you will perform better. If you kill yourself doing all of this, you're only going to burn out, and then you're only going to be less effective, and that's just going to be a spiraling domino effect. So, but again, it's really hard to get out of that mindset. But I think, I'm quite strict with trying to make sure that we have our boundaries. And if we, yes, you might need to work late occasionally. That's just part of the deal. You might have to work on a weekend. Yes, fine. But if you can structure in a way that your core time is restricted, that will force you into making yourself hopefully more effective during the week, and then give you that time when you can do things for yourself, whether it's, be there for your family, go on holiday, or, this, that, or the other.
It's hard, isn't it? And one of the other things is as well, that I've learned, you have to be okay. I think when you're the business owner, especially, there's going to be difficult decisions. There always is going to be. And making the call, do you bid in that project? Do you do this? How do I scale up? Do I not scale up?
Yeah.
Do all that stuff. Do you have any advice for people in those difficult decisions? Because as you mentioned, it's always tricky, isn't it?
I think one is you need to go by your gut. Your gut's probably always going to be right. I think that is, for me at least, I do believe in that. Doesn't always necessarily mean that everyone's going to agree with you, but I think, you've got to believe in something yourself. I think that's one thing. But I think with projects, you want, of course, to do the glamorous job. You want to have that. You want that to be your legacy. You want that to be your career. The reality is that's very unlikely to happen, at least in, once you've set up in the immediate future.
Yeah.
You have to be prepared to do some less glamorous work as part of the learning curve, a part of, paying the bills, but also building relationships, training people up. You have to go through that process. And I think, to say that everything is all rosy and, you're always designing beautiful projects and they're all, amazing cultural institutions with, unlimited budgets, etc., that's not a reality of life. And that's, if you get one of those in your lifetime, then fantastic. But the reality is it's not going to be that. And you have to be comfortable with that. And I think be comfortable with trying different things as well, you want, I think, kind of stay in a lane so that you can build an expertise and you want to be recognized for a certain maybe specialty that people will turn to you for. So I guess not being a jack of all trades but master of none, but actually having something that's your sort of your thing. Except that you are going to have to probably do lots of different things on that journey. And even you as a founder, you're going to have to probably wear 5,000 hats. You're going to be a part one and a leader at some point.
It never ends.
You're going to have to do a bit, pull your sleeves up and get stuck in. But again, you also need to be careful not to get too stuck in that then you forget the business as well.
Yeah.
So it's a constant minefield of
the balance of working on the business and in the business.
Yeah.
Is really, really hard. It's a bit of a strange time at the moment. It's such a nightmare. Architecture is so reactive to the current markets.
Yeah.
Like, as of the time we're recording this, I think right now, you touched upon it at the start, interest rates are high. They're going to be high for a while. And of course, I mean, even speaking openly, like my pensions and all this stuff have been completely affected by the conflict. The war outside at the moment. I mean, what you do when you're an architecture practice like this, do you think that you have to learn to pivot and move to the current markets as well?
It's definitely it's definitely a conversation we've had. I mean, our bread and butter has always been commercial workspace. I think that's a market that's been completely all over the place in the last few years, stemming from COVID and now everything else, and will continue to be potentially. We're facing loads of pressure from AI. We've lost certain types of work to AI.
Yeah.
Clients have decided rather than hiring an architect, they just do it with in-house with an AI software. Talking about space, yeah.
Well, let's see how long that works before the lawsuit comes in.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's another we can probably touch on, but it's that's something that's affected us. You know, we lost a 6-figure stream of work because of that pivot.
Oh, really?
Which, yeah,
That specific thing.
yeah,
Which is which I don't agree with that. However, the point is, you either get the project or not, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's a shame. Yeah.
So that was difficult. It's difficult because of this, I think, this nature of risk predictability that
Yeah.
we've already talked about. If you can't demonstrate that you've done some of those sectors, then the barrier to entry is really high.
Got it.
So it's a bit of a catch-22.
Yeah.
Like you're almost set up to fail. I think you might be able to pivot if maybe you hire well and you bring someone in who can bring that expertise and the projects with them. But then that's also a huge cost and potentially a huge risk because it might not work out.
Yeah.
So it's a constant. It's really difficult. I think the way procurement works now is making it really hard. And I think it's almost feels like, I'm going to be really honest, which just sounds a bit doom and gloom. It's like any practice in the commercial sphere that's set up since 2020, it's like a dead end. That's what it feels like at the moment.
Yeah.
And I that might be really over dramatic, and I'm hoping, that loads of people can prove me wrong. But it does feel like that because it feels like, well, the questionnaire says no, so therefore we don't even get in the room, because you can cold outreach people till the cows come home.
Yeah.
They don't respond.
No.
They're not interested. We even had actually as a marketing tool, this, obviously you see so much on LinkedIn, you see so much on Instagram. But we decided to go the old-fashioned route and actually make a book of our first 5 to 6 years worth of work, and nice hardback book, and we sent that out to clients that we were interested in working with, hoping in a nice blue box, spend a bit of money and quality and time in making these marketing books, but also hopefully it being something that they're not going to throw away when they receive it. But then if they're interested, they'll spend their own time slowly flicking through it and be interested, and hopefully they'll then get back in touch. I'd say it wasn't the most successful thing we did. We got a few people come back to us, said thank you for sending it to us, 10 out of 10 for proactive marketing. But then even with that, we still then get blocked by the pre-qualification spiel. Well, this, that, and the other. And I think there's something needs to change where people have got to get rid of this perception that small, newer practice, clearly with a track record, is still more risky than going with the same old, who are actually very large and have incredibly high turnovers, and actually in a time of uncertainty are potentially more risky because they've got a lot more to lose.
Yeah.
If, and probably the margin is very tight. I don't know. It's challenging well for everyone. I think, I'm sure a large practice will also have a good argument to counter mine, but it's the client side. Something needs to happen there where they get better, learn a better appreciation for what they're doing when they procure design work.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate, because we were speaking before this. I mean, I'm speaking to a lot of business owners at the moment we're all frantically trying to work this out together, and it's so good to air and talk about it. I almost feel bad sometimes. I don't know how you feel that is, because I mean, these amazing students were just studying now.
Yeah.
And I remember when I joined in architecture, and it was a big studio, and I remember like a flippant comment that one architect made about, can't believe that people are still studying these days. And at the time I was like, oh, okay. I do have concerns though, and this is just personal ones, where like, it's now going to cost £9,000 a year to study architecture.
I know.
And it's a 5-year degree, and the costs are up. And even with me, it's trying to make revenue in the business and give people what I feel is a fair salary.
it's really, really hard, isn't it? So
Yeah.
suddenly students are kind of entering the industry with bags of debt. I mean, realistically now, let's pretend, because I didn't come from, like, unlucky for me, we were talking about connections earlier. I don't have a rich architecture background. My parents weren't rich architects or had developers. So unlike like you, I had to go out and get everything myself. So that means you probably got all this bags of debt, and then you enter architecture and you kind of got to build yourself up. So I think it's really, really hard all around, but people still study architecture because there is something amazing about it.
I think the beauty of architecture is, it's one of the few things in life that everybody comes in contact with on an hourly basis, daily basis. We live in architecture, we operate in architecture. Buildings have influence how we live and be as people.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important. And I think the ability to play a role in shaping, a life experience for someone is an incredible responsibility, but also an incredibly great opportunity. The challenge is that I don't think enough people in the whole sphere of how they connect with it are taking it seriously enough. Of how much, actually architecture brings to creating that value for everyone, including financial value, ironically.
And then yourself as an architect, I still, despite all the adversity of we're all trying to work out together, I still get from you the excitement of architecture, and it's still there. You feel like you have to be protective of that in the darkest times, because the projects are amazing that you've done, and I'm not just saying it. So I wouldn't want to say there's a reason you still do it, right? There's a reason why you're going through all this, you making the project work to get it over the line.
Absolutely. I think going through the slog of doing a project, and then at the end seeing it all come together and it looks great, and you can see the smile on the client's face, you can see the users who are coming in and exploring it, and it's going to be their home for however long. Seeing it all come together and actually just become a part of someone's daily life, that they choose to inhabit that space for whatever reason, whether it's a home or it's an office or it's anything else. To say that you played a part in shaping that is the most exciting bit for me. I love designing for people. I think at the end of the day, designing from the inside out. Seeing life in a building is something that I find really rewarding and exciting.
No, you can't forget that. So that's why we still do it. And I think that's why people are still studying architecture. And you know me, I know I don't do architecture per se anymore, but I definitely wouldn't be here without architecture. And I think like what we learn in university, like the way you mentioned the Bartlett, you never ever let it go. And for me, it's been deeply, deeply rewarding. Can I ask, what's your view on because we talk about the present and you're a fighter, and we'll get through it all, and hopefully it would be nice if some of the paperwork changes and all that stuff, and tenders are a bit more open and flexible. But how do you feel about the future then at the moment? Because despite all the hardship, I see a little twinkle in your eye, and none of us are ever going to give up because it's in our blood. But how do you feel about the future?
I think it's funny. I think these things potentially come in cycles. I think we will come back to a time when people are going to wake up to, that they've just done the mundanity of things that are being built around now, the sort of, sameness. People are going to get bored of it. People are going to want something fresh and exciting and new. And I think the younger generations coming through, who are going to be the next people to influence these things, I think there is a hunger, that they're not the sort of generation that seems to want to put up with the status quo. They look for change. And I think if they're able to bring something, to the built environment where they can champion change, sustainability, but also experience, interest, quality of life, I think that is an exciting prospect. And I think, for any young person that's listening, make that be, one of your mandates, because, there is a wealth of possibility out there, and there's lots of great things that can happen. And I think that makes me excited. But we just need the people who control that narrative to really invest in it.
Yeah, fair enough. So for you as a business owner, when you are looking to hire on your team, and especially, we're talking about an SME, which is a practice under 30, which is most businesses in the UK.
Yeah.
And you don't get the support that we need. What kind of CVs and portfolios resonate from you when you're hiring? What do you kind of look for?
I think, we're a small team. And I think, the person skill is just as important as them as a person.
Yes.
I think we look for people who have a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
who are willing to, or demonstrate that they can sort of step out of their own comfort zones a little bit to explore new territory, to bring new things, to challenge, certain perceptions or norms, and actually bring something unique to the business to help it flourish and grow. I think we're not a company that would do well for someone who just wants to just sit behind a computer and be told what to do every day, because
How about the height?
no. And also we're small that, that people need to have need to be their own and need to build their own brand and career, in their own rights, as well as being a part of the team and the company. I think one of the biggest things I've learned, and I'm continuing to learn, I think, is how important your network is. And I would recommend anyone who's going through any job or, whatever stage they're at in their career journey so far, that building your own network of people that you collaborate with, you trust, that you have a good relationship with, that is so important, because you never know when that's going to be needed, whether it's now in your current job that you can bring something to your current employer and team, or it's something that you need later in life. That's critical. And I don't think, at least my learnings within architecture, I don't think people take that seriously enough. The network that you have, the relationships that you have with people are so important. And I think, if we were to hire again, that is an attribute I think I would add to the list that I've learned. I think just the network, what you can bring to the team is huge.
Do you want to, I completely get them. Do you want to mix it up? Do you want to ask me one or two questions for fun?
Okay.
Never ask me one. You go, why are you being so mean to me?
So I guess, we've talked about, practice and being excited about architecture and the future of architecture. I think, it's a tough industry, it's a long education, and then it's a tough world to work in. I think, there's definitely points when, even up with my own reflection, where I, would question, is this right? Or, I think in the same ways we talk about pivoting.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've pivoted
I have.
at one point,
Yeah.
and clearly it seems to be working out well for you. And I think to also reassure people that these things also happen in life. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I think, bizarrely, I love the course of architecture. I still really enjoy the practice I joined. The thing was, I got to the desk and I realized that the 9 to 5 that I was doing, I didn't quite enjoy. And I was clock watching and I had no interest in technical detail. It's just not me. I feel like you've got to be intrinsically invested in what you were trying to solve. And that's why I've got friends who have the architecture bug, because they aren't compelled to do it. Like you go above and beyond to get things done. And you are highlighting things in the system that hopefully we can solve, because I can see that the whole point for you is you want to get these amazing projects over the line. I just didn't have the same thing there. So ironically, I then left that and I fell into recruitment, and I didn't really want to do recruitment. It was my in-between job that I'd done for 12 years, but I saw something in, or maybe I can help architecture in an abstract way. And then I was suddenly very good at it. I mean, it was very animated and fast, and I would get involved. And suddenly then I transcended from clock watching in a job which I'd just studied 5 years for, to feeling like I can add some value.
Yeah.
And then when I set up my own business, it was that feeling of, oh, great, I can do the things I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
But then I realized I don't really know it all, and you need support. And the concept of a self-made man is a myth. It really is. So
Yeah.
you do need team around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing is, you've got to then really tap into what inspires people. Otherwise, I think, because they'll get a decent employee, but if you can then find people who are passionate about it and let them kind of work, then that really is like
Oh yeah.
the magnum opus. So what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say in a roundabout way is like, now the only downside to a business is, so I was complaining about my 9 to 5, and I remember being there going like, 5:45, why am I here? It's like 15 minutes, I'm not paid for this. And then my friend who used to work at Foster's was laughing at me, going like, it's the easy street here. But now I work all the hours, and sometimes it's too far. It's way too far.
Yeah.
But at least I'm alive. And so that's the thing. Like, I think that architecture, if you're passionate about, like, there was a quote that Norman Foster said, I don't know why, I was looking at a reel, and he's kind of tapped into it, that actually you need to do, and you know, I mean, that's a different level of business, but his point was that whether it's architecture or whatever, you got to find what you're passionate about and keep going, because then it kind of doesn't transcend working. I feel like you're there. The downside of it, though, is that like you said, you mentioned about how hard it is to win work and everything. You're absolutely right. When I set up my business, some of my oldest long-standing clients were like, oh, Steve, it's great to hear from you, but I don't know if I need another recruitment consultant. And you're like, what? What's going on?
Yeah.
I've just helped you for 4 years. So I had a preview of your thing of like, you're a great guy, but we'll cut back to you. So I pivoted. I think you got to pivot, but you got to pivot into what you enjoy, and you even got to pivot. Like, I mean, I'm a little bit like I do believe to shred the numbers, and I do believe in hiring people. But even me, I've got someone joining next month, and I'm going into this war which doesn't end. So I then got a duty to protect people. Yeah, and it's not that sinful. Yeah, another thing as well no one talks about, and this is just me, sometimes you have to have difficult conversations.
Yes.
With your staff, with everything. Or sometimes you just got to do all this stuff which is not talked about. So I find it hard, you know, and
It is hard.
yeah,
It's
and
really
I find the balance sometimes between like, I kind of what I've learned recently, and Ben's gonna laugh because he's gonna be like, yeah, right, see what he says. But basically, I do have a duty to like push people's careers, and sometimes that means that like, it's easier not to say something, you know, then you're cutting up with certain things. So I have a duty to push people, but not everyone wants to be pushed, Alex. Yeah, so it's very nuanced, and what I'm beginning, every different human being is very different. So like Ben's in the room now, I'm gonna have to get you on the camera because like I keep picking on people, but like, you know, what makes Ben really suddenly, you know, lose the hours and get immersed and do this exceptional piece is very different than someone like Hannah on my team. And, you know, it's really trying to work all that out. And
I think that's the I guess the best definition of a team. You know, that everyone has their role to play in the common goal.
correct.
But you're not going to be in goal and play strike, you know, on a football field.
Yeah. But like you, I'm a small business. And so we can, you know, there's an element of making things work. You got to pivot, and, you know, we're all human. And so, you know, some person can be off, some people can have it over. You got to make it all work.
Yeah.
Therein lies the challenge.
Yeah.
And I think that part of architecture and that part of running an architecture business is not taught, in my opinion. I mean, I never did my part 3, but that's the hard bit. Like,
Not enough. I
Yeah.
think, if anything, like if I look back at my education, part 1 and 2 did not have enough business training. I think business training almost in some ways is almost just as important as the design work. The Bartlett was a very creative place. Some of the stuff I think we did, in my honest opinion, was completely pointless. Like, I still have no value. That's not giving me any value in my professional career at all. Some of it has. But I think also, it comes down to, maybe the teachers I had. I had some really, great tutors who helped open my mind and maybe think out the box in a way that I'd never learned. I think that's an important skill. But I think learning business, understanding money, cash flow, winning work, team dynamics, are all incredibly important skills. Dealing with people. The university didn't do enough for that. And also crits were, I don't think you're allowed to call them crits anymore.
Really?
Or some universities you can't. You have to call it
something else.
Yeah, because it's too negative.
Critique, yeah. Well,
they were perceived as negative things. Like, I remember, when I went into first year, we were made to feel like they were the scariest thing in the world, and presenting our work was, we were going to get ripped apart. Or, we were going to be embarrassed in front of our entire year group. And education shouldn't be about creating that culture of fear.
no.
I think the Bartlett, if I'm completely honest, created a massive culture of fear. It's been widely publicized in the press, the issues the Bartlett's had since, and I think for a lot of it's justified.
Yeah, I read the report and I went, well, yeah, this is kind of normal, because I went to a London university as well, and then the public were shocked that I'm like, that's an architecture studio in central London.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's also because the people that went through the system, who are the generation above myself, they all had to do it. So it's kind of that's why practice has also got a stereotype for a lot of companies of being quite antiquated and working all hours, constantly doing work, burning the midnight candle, and just creating a really not so great culture. That's something when I started this practice that I just wanted to make sure that we did not have any of that, which is why we actually at the moment we have a system where, as long as you're in the office, more or less, between 10 and 5, if you need an hour in the morning to do your own thing, or if you need some time at the end of the day to do your own thing, totally fine. Because life happens. You've got to be able to look after yourself. If you have a hobby that needs, on one day a week, you need to finish a bit early because you want to go and do that, go and do it. You've got to look after yourself. And everyone, and it's my responsibility to look after the team so that they feel good. And I think, trying to get rid of that hysteria and that strange culture that came from the past. You can still work hard, you can still do great things, you just don't need to do it by killing yourself. I just don't believe in that.
Yeah, no, I've got 2 members of my team that work incredibly hard during the hours. You could say that question, the output could be the same as someone working more outside, so it doesn't need to be that way. I would say that the crits, I agree. The hysteria around it was way too much. I've been there before, panicking.
Yeah.
I do think if we remove a bit of that, the one thing I do like about the crit is as a business owner, I do think it prepares for you for that. When you got a project, you showcase your work. People are there. You've got to seize the moment.
I think, you're absolutely right. I think because we do a lot of design reviews in the office, we pin everything up on the wall and we talk around it. I think, and I believe in showcasing and discussing and debating. The issue with what I think has come from the crit system is it's given people a lack of confidence.
Yes.
Not everyone.
Yeah, the share bit. I get what you mean.
Which means that when you have these reviews in practice, which are supposed to be friendly conversations, because as far as I'm concerned, every idea is right until it's proven wrong. And you need to go through those discussions in order to hone in on what you think is the right solution for this particular problem. But if you're coming from a culture of fear, where you're too scared to even put an idea forward because you're scared that it will be perceived as wrong. Being wrong is not a problem. This is what people, I think, I try and, teach the team is it's okay to be wrong. I will challenge you and I hope you'll challenge me back. But that whole debate is what brings better solutions. But if you're too uncomfortable having the debate, then because of this fear that has come from school, then that's when things get difficult.
Yeah.
So that's why, and that's why in the past within our team, we've invested in someone coming in to help do presentation training and coach people into helping how to speak and tell stories and answer, to try and get rid of those cobwebs that are sort of dusted over you, get rid of it all and bring a really fresh energy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there was one tutor, or one name of mine that just had that God complex and made a flippant comment, even towards me, going like, I suppose the project's fine if you want to be a CAD monkey. And like, there is no need for that, because I'm here 20 years later and I can remember it and mention it to you. It's kind of like that argument of the Gordon Ramsay thing. Well, if I throw a frying pan at your head and then you become a good chef, then you're welcome. But I think that's gone too far.
Yeah, but also the irony with that, the CAD monkey analogy. For some people, that's not what they want. They don't want to be doing CAD all day. But for some people, actually, they really enjoy the technical side of, or the sort of the IT side of practice, which especially with things like BIM and even AI now, and visualization and all the other sort of softwares and tools, parametric design, etc., that rely on computer work to realize or develop those designs or find solutions to problems. Well, that is but they might really enjoy that. So if someone has an avenue of practice or the industry that they really enjoy, then the university has a responsibility to nurture that, and not just because that person it's not what they like. It doesn't mean that person is doing, that student is doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I think you've got to, this is such, we operate in such a broad spectrum of an industry. And there's so many nuances and specialisms to it that the amount of doors that are available to go through into different areas is huge. And you shouldn't be forced into doing any particular lane that you're not uncomfortable with. I think to go back to the point you said before, you've got to find your passion. You've got to find your direction. You've got to find your North Star at the end of the day.
Your projects are filled with passion. I admire what you've done. It's very hard being a leader and a designer, practice runner. But, your work is inspirational and you should be really proud. I mean that.
Thank you. Well, I think, I represent the team, and I represent, in this conversation, all the collaborators that we've partnered with on these projects. So it's a team effort. It's, I'm just one cog in it. And, I'm only as successful as the people who have shared that journey with me or we've worked together with, and clients, collaborators, partners, consultants, team. We are, that's what shaped it. It's not just me.
Well, I love it. And so for anyone that's watching this, if they want to get in contact with you, where can they find you, Alex? And what's your website, all that?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Alex Sutton. Studio Sutton, our website, www.studiosutton.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you for coming in. It's been a pleasure to chat.